Hello everybody, my name is Nathan, and I am the man with a cartoon obsession. I've mentioned this before, but I was born in 1996, so I mainly grew up in the 2000s. DVDs existed at that point, and Blu-ray was becoming a format in the middle of that decade, but most of the home releases for movies and TV shows I had access to as a kid were on VHS tapes. Even though the format has been obsolete for a long time now, I still love VHS and have a great appreciation for it. The main reason is because it introduced me to many different movies and shows, especially animated ones. Today I'm going to talk about 5 of them. The criteria for this list is simple. My first exposure to the animated work in question had to have been a VHS tape. If I had seen it on TV or in theaters and got it on VHS later, that doesn't count. Also, this is just a list, not a top 5, so there are no rankings. Finally, these are obviously picks that are unique to me. If you have animated works that you were introduced to through VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, whatever physical media it may be, please let me know. I'm interested in learning about others' experiences in that regard. With all that out of the way, let's get into my list of 5 animated works I first discovered on VHS, and we're going to start off with a classic. Digimon, Digital Monsters. I was specifically introduced to Digimon Tamers because of a VHS tape. It was called The Birth of Guilmon, and if I remember correctly, it had the first 3 episodes of that season on it, but they were edited together like a movie. I didn't really know what was going on when I first watched it. Agumon was referenced in an episode and I had no idea what that was. Of course, I later found out that Agumon is to Digimon what Pikachu is to Pokemon. That information isn't really that important though, since Tamers follows new characters, both human and Digimon. The setup is different from the first season as well, since instead of humans going to the digital world, Season 3 starts off with Digimon coming to the human world. There are plenty of other differences as well, but the point is you can easily jump into Digimon Tamers without having any prior knowledge of the franchise. My brother and I did when we were kids, and we became huge Digimon fans after watching this VHS tape. We used to get all sorts of toys, video games, and cards, plus we watched the show all the time when it was on Jetix. I can't speak for my brother, but I'm still a huge Digimon fan to this day. I always look back fondly on watching this tape as a kid. I was introduced to voice actors I would come to love throughout the years, such as Steve Blum, and characters as well, such as Guilmon and Terriermon. Not to mention, I also get nostalgic for the trailers at the beginning of the VHS, like the ones for Max Keeble's Big Move and Timo Supremo. They're obviously not part of the main feature, but those are contents of the tape, so I figured I'd give them a brief mention. Anyway, I have a lot of great memories watching this VHS, and I have to think that if I hadn't watched it as a kid, I might not be the Digimon fan that I am now. And honestly, I couldn't imagine living in a world without Digimon.
Good morning, cardboard box.
Before we continue, I would greatly appreciate it if you could take just a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more animation-related content. Now that I got that out of the way, let's go from Digimon to Digimon at Home.
I was transported to a faraway land, into a world where monsters rule.
Monster Rancher. Unlike Digimon, my brother and I had 2 VHS tapes of Monster Rancher. We had Let the Games Begin and The Problem with Pixie, which are volumes 1 and 4 respectively. We actually got volume 4 first, so we jumped into the middle of the first season without knowing anything about the show. That's when Genki and the others are well into their confrontation with Pixie and the other baddies. When we eventually got volume 1, that was a big help since we got the origin of how Genki made it to that world and what exactly is going on. Even so, it was a fun watch. I remember liking a lot of scenes, characters, and the catchy theme song, as well as the Unlock Your Disc rap that played in the middle of each episode.
Is it a gel, slippery fool? Unlock your disc. Or Captain Gel, these monsters rule. Unlock your disc.
I remember a couple of the trailers for one of the volumes we had. One was for the 1996 Sonic the Hedgehog OVA, and another one was for a 90s anime called Nadia the Secret of Blue Water. I bring this up because I ended up checking these out many years later, or at least partially in Nadia's case. I really like seeing trailers, previews, and even product advertisements before the features on VHS and DVD. Unfortunately, that's not as common on physical media anymore, but they have introduced me to many things throughout the years. Anyway, I really enjoyed what I saw of Monster Rancher as a kid. I've always been intrigued by these Pokemon-like anime that were made just to sell toys and games. Some are better than others, but I liked this sample of Monster Rancher. I ended up watching the entire series a few years ago, and I reviewed the show on the channel. My feelings on it now are basically the same as they were then, so feel free to check out that review if you're interested. Speaking of that review, I quickly want to mention that in it, I said the English dub was done by ADV Films. That's incorrect, as it was actually done by Ocean Productions out of Vancouver. This makes sense considering the fact that it features several familiar voices that I recognize from Ed, Edd and Eddy. I recognized them as a kid too, which is probably another reason I was drawn to the show. Regardless of the reasons, I had fun watching these Monster Rancher VHS tapes growing up. I had never heard of it prior to that, but I've never forgotten about it since.
We showed them a thing or two, huh, Mochi?
Let's step away from anime for a minute and go into the wonderful world of Western animation. Longtime viewers know that I love talking about obscure works, and I couldn't think of any other way to talk about this one, so let's get to work.
Dick and Doug in a little yellow truck are Daisy's favorite friends.
Dig and Dug with Daisy. I'm not sure how many people remember this or have even heard of it. I don't even remember exactly where we got the VHS from. Dig and Dug with Daisy is a British stop-motion show from the 90s. From what I've been able to find, it didn't last long as it only has 16 episodes, and they're each around 10 minutes long. The show follows two construction workers, or builders as they're called in the UK, and to be honest, it doesn't seem like they're very good at their jobs. Dig and Dug take a while to complete seemingly easy tasks, and they even need help from Daisy, Doug's 6-year-old niece, because they can't figure out how to complete the job themselves. The VHS I had was called On the Farm, which consists of 4 episodes that take place on a farm. Scenarios include Dig and Dug trying to clear a bunch of turnips off the road and driving fence posts into the ground. Like I said before, they're so inept that they can't figure out any good solution until Daisy, who I repeat is 6 years old, tells the two quote-unquote professionals how to handle it. I will admit that I did find a lot of these situations rather comical growing up. After watching through some of these episodes again as an adult, I can still find it somewhat amusing. Dig and Dug with Daisy isn't a kid show that holds up super well for me, but it's still a cool and more obscure piece of my VHS watching days.
1, 2, 3.
This next title may be considered obscure by some, but it is also known as the predecessor to The Lion King. Kimba the White Lion. If you're not familiar with Kimba the White Lion, the story is kind of similar to that of The Lion King, except Kimba came out roughly 30 years earlier. The show has 2 English dubs. The first one was done by Titan Productions in 1966, which is the dub you'll hear if you watch this show on streaming platforms. However, that's not the dub I knew as a kid. In 1993, Canadian studio Zaza Sound Productions put out their own dub, except they only dubbed 16 episodes out of a 52-episode series. 2 years later, an American company called UAV Corporation released VHS copies of the Canadian dub under the title Kimba the Lion Prince. This is how I was introduced to the show. We got the Jungle Thief volume from Kmart if I remember correctly, and my brother and I watched it a few times over the years. There were only 2 episodes on the tape, so there wasn't much to go off of. I'm not going to lie, I don't remember much about the episodes themselves. 1 or 2 scenes from each, but not much stuck with me. I've even rewatched clips from those episodes throughout the years, and I still struggle to remember them. I remember that one episode involved a drought, and the only thing I remember from the other episode was Kimba swallowing a spoon. One thing I will never forget, however, is the theme song that was made exclusively for this dub. I love this theme song. It's probably because I heard this one first, but I think this is much better than the American dub's theme song.
Kimba, 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 Kimba.
The show itself might not have stuck with me over time, but I still enjoyed getting VHS of shows and movies that I hadn't heard of as a kid, and now I can talk a little bit about those obscure titles and maybe introduce someone else to them. Whether you have or have not heard of Kimba the White Lion, check out an episode or 2 and see if it sticks with you.
Why don't we stop all this fighting and go see the opening of the 21st Century Exposition? It's supposed to be quite a show!
I've only talked about shows up to this point, so let's round out this list with a movie. In fact, it's a movie that's near and dear to my heart.
And made El Dorado, the magnificent and golden.
The Road to El Dorado. I tried doing a full review of this movie a couple years ago, but unfortunately the video got corrupted and it was lost forever. I may attempt to redo that review at some point, but for now, I'll just talk about it in the context of this list. I don't remember when or how this VHS came into my possession, but I do remember watching it many times. I've watched this movie a lot in general, but a good chunk of my viewings were on the VHS tape. I thought this movie was incredible as a kid. I thought Tulio and Miguel were a hilarious duo. I thought the music was great. I thought the art style was beautiful. I thought this was one of the best movies I've ever seen at that point in time. What do I think about it now? Basically, none of my opinions have changed. I still think this movie is incredible, and it's still one of my all-time favorites. Believe it or not, this movie didn't perform well at the box office, and it also didn't receive great reviews at first. Over time, though, a lot more people came around on the road to El Dorado, and rightfully so. I get that maybe the humor isn't for everyone, or maybe they find the plot predictable, or the characters don't have enough depth to them. Whatever the case may be, it's clear that a lot of people were hard on this movie, and a lot of people realized that. I'm glad The Road to El Dorado got a lot more love over the years because it's a movie that fully deserves it. DreamWorks didn't give this movie the attention they probably should have, but the finished product is still wonderful. I thought so when I first watched this on a low-quality VHS release. Here we are, probably 20 or so years later, and I still love this film as much as I did when I was a kid. Who knows? Maybe even a little more.
Beware the wrath of the gods! Be gone!
Save it for the high priest, honey. You're gonna need it.
Miguel, it's not working. Miguel, we've been caught.
Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you have any other cartoons, anime, or other animated works that you want me to talk about in the future, please let me know. After all, it's not my channel, it's our channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and feel free to check out my social media pages, audition for an outro, and join the official Cartoon Session Discord. The links for all of which are in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.
Hi there! This is Digimon from Digimon Tamers, and this is Cartoon Obsession. Takano, I did it! Now can you give me some Digimon bread, please?